Day 11. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and your hand finds the phone before your eyes even open. You silence it, you roll over, you tell yourself tomorrow the same way you told yourself yesterday and the 10 days before that. That's not a discipline problem. That's something else completely. By the end of this video, you'll understand the one shift that separates the person who shows up for 11 days from the person who shows up for 11 years. It's not more willpower. It's not a better morning routine, a colder shower, or a stricter alarm clock across the room. It's something champions build long before they ever walk into a gym, a dojo, or a practice room. Once you see it, you'll notice its absence in almost everyone who's ever quit on themselves, including maybe you. Discipline is the trait everyone blames first. It's the story you tell yourself in the mirror at midnight, right before you promise to start fresh on Monday. And it's almost always the wrong diagnosis. It's also a convenient one. Blaming discipline lets you avoid a harder question. Not, why didn't I do the thing, but who did I believe I was while I wasn't doing it? That question is uncomfortable, so most people skip straight past it and reach for a better planner instead. It's also a profitable one. An entire industry sells you planners, cold plunges, and 45-day challenges built on the promise that more grit will finally fix you. None of it is dishonest exactly. It's just aimed at the wrong target. That happens over and over, year after year, while the real gap stays unaddressed. You can buy a better journal every January for a decade straight. You'll still wake up on day 11 reaching for the phone. Here's what most people miss. Champions fail just as often as you do. They skip workouts. They eat the food they said they wouldn't. They hit snooze more than they'd ever admit on camera. The difference isn't that their willpower never breaks. Look closely at the career of almost any decorated athlete, and you'll find a record full of losses, injuries, and stretches where nothing worked. The difference lives somewhere else entirely, in three places most people never think to check. You're standing in a kitchen at 11 at night, and there's a slice of cold pizza sitting on the counter. Someone offers it to you. A person who's trying to eat healthy negotiates with themselves for a second, weighs the day, weighs the tiredness, and eats it anyway. A person who has decided, I don't eat like that anymore, doesn't negotiate at all. The sentence is different, and that sentence is doing more work than you'd expect. Psychologists describe part of this through self-perception theory, the idea that people don't only act based on who they believe they are, they come to believe who they are based on how they've been acting and talking about themselves. Champions rarely say, I'm trying to be a runner. They say, I'm a runner who hasn't run today. It sounds like a small difference. It isn't. This pattern doesn't stop at the kitchen counter. You can watch the same pattern outside the gym entirely. Competitive chess players who describe themselves as a strong player having a rough tournament tend to recover their form within a few games. Players who describe themselves as someone who chokes under pressure tend to keep proving themselves right game after game, because the sentence becomes the instructions their brain quietly follows. Notice the same split at a desk at 3 in the afternoon when the craving for a cigarette hits during a stressful stretch of work. Someone who's quitting treats the craving as a battle to win through sheer force, one that can be lost on a bad enough day. Someone who has quietly decided, I don't smoke, treats the same craving as background noise, something to notice and let pass, because it has nothing to do with who they've already decided they are. And here's the twist most people never expect. This labeling doesn't arrive after years of results. It comes first. The identity shows up before the evidence does, not after it. But a label on its own is just a sentence, and sentences are cheap. Champions back theirs with something smaller and stranger than most people expect. What if the workout itself was never really the point? Every time you complete a small action, you're not just building fitness or skill. You're casting a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. Miss the vote once, and the identity survives fine. Miss it for weeks, and the identity slowly loses the election, so to speak. And the excuses start sounding a lot more reasonable than they actually are. Picture a gym at 6 in the morning. Most of the room is empty except for 3 or 4 regulars. One of them is a woman in her 50s. She never talks to anyone, never posts about it online, and never seems to need an audience. She's not there because she loves the exercise itself. She's there because skipping today would cost her something more expensive than fatigue. It would cost her the story she's built about who she is. That story took years to construct, and this is where it compounds. In a way, almost nobody notices in the moment. This is identity-based habit formation, and it flips the usual advice upside down. Most people try to change their behavior first and hope the identity eventually catches up. Champions build the identity first, in small, repeatable proofs, and let the behavior follow because at that point it has no other option. The workout stops being a decision. It becomes a formality, almost boring in how little debate it requires. This connects to what psychologists call self-efficacy, your own belief in your capacity to actually pull something off. Every small vote doesn't just build a habit. It steadily raises the ceiling on what you believe you're capable of finishing next time, which is a different thing entirely from motivation. Motivation asks how you feel about the task. Self-efficacy asks whether you trust yourself to actually see it through, and that trust gets built one small, boring rep at a time. Not the workout, not the willpower, the story underneath both of them. But here's the part that should actually worry you. Identity built this way is fragile in one very specific spot. And that spot is exactly where most people break. Fast forward 6 years, and picture two piano students who started on the exact same day, with the exact same teacher, in the exact same freezing practice room above a laundromat. One of them misses 3 days of practice during a rough week at school. She tells herself, "I completely failed at this," and something in her chest quietly agrees. The identity took the hit, not just the schedule. Within a month, she's found reasons to quit lessons altogether. She'll tell people later that she just wasn't cut out for it, as if that had been decided years ago, rather than 3 days ago. The other misses the same 3 days. He tells himself, "That week didn't work, so next week I adjust the schedule." No identity went on trial, only a plan did, and plans are easy to revise without flinching, the way you'd casually reroute a drive around traffic. 10 years later, one of them still plays most evenings. The other doesn't own a piano anymore and barely remembers why she stopped. This is the deepest layer, and it's the one almost nobody names out loud. Champions have already separated their actions from their identity. A bad week becomes data instead of a verdict. Psychologists sometimes describe part of this as growth mindset, the belief that ability is built rather than fixed. But it runs deeper than that alone. It's also a way of managing cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of a gap between who you think you are and what you just did. Most people close that gap by shrinking the belief about themselves, usually downward, without ever announcing the change. Champions close it by adjusting the plan instead and leaving the identity completely untouched. So here's where the 3 layers meet, and it isn't a very comfortable place to stand. None of this is really about gyms or pianos or pizza at 11 at night. It's about the sentence quietly running underneath almost every habit you've ever tried and failed to keep. If the sentence is, "I'm trying to become," failure confirms the distance between you and the goal. If the sentence is, "I already am, and today just didn't show it," failure becomes something you can survive instead of something that defines you. There's a bigger pattern hiding inside this. It has very little to do with fitness or piano lessons at all. Look at how differently people recover from a divorce, a layoff, or a failed business. You'll find the same split every time. Watch 2 partners handle the exact same argument, and you'll find it there too. One treats it as proof the whole relationship was a mistake. The other treats it as one bad Tuesday inside a much longer marriage. The ones who bounce back fastest rarely describe failure as proof of who they are. They describe it as one chapter, badly written, inside a much longer book they still get to author. The ones who stay stuck tend to have rewritten their whole identity around the worst thing that happened to them. Give it a few years, and you can usually tell which story someone chose, just by how they describe the same event. Same failure, different sentence. Completely different decade. Most self-help advice hands you a system. Wake up earlier, track the habit, remove the temptation from the house. Systems help, but they're built on top of a foundation. And if that foundation is a shaky identity, the system just gives you a more organized way to fall off it. Here's the sentence worth remembering long after this video ends. Discipline isn't the ability to force yourself to act against who you are. It's the almost invisible result of no longer needing to. None of this matters if it stays a theory, so here's how to test it this week. Pick one small action you can complete today. Make it something almost embarrassingly easy, small enough that skipping it would feel absurd. Afterward, say a single sentence out loud, not just in your head. That's the kind of person I am. Not I'm trying to be. Not I'm working on it. Just that's who this already is. Do it on the easy days. Do it especially on the hard ones. That's when the action barely counts and the sentence feels like a stretch. It's also exactly when it matters most, and exactly when most people skip it. If you miss a day anyway, resist the urge to rewrite the whole sentence. This is the moment most people quietly quit. Adjust the plan for tomorrow instead and leave the identity exactly where you left it. Track the vote, not the mood you were in when you cast it. Moods change by the hour. Votes, added up over months, are what actually decide the election. Think back to day 11, the alarm at 5 a.m., the hand reaching for the phone before the eyes even open. That moment was never really a test of willpower. It was a vote, and on day 11, the vote didn't go the way you wanted. But an election isn't decided by one lost vote. It's decided by which sentence you keep repeating about who's casting them, morning after morning, long after anyone else is watching. Here's what I'm genuinely curious about. Think about the last habit you abandoned. Right before you quit, what sentence were you silently telling yourself? Drop it in the comments below. I'd like to know what you notice once you actually go back and check. If this is the kind of pattern you want to keep spotting in yourself and in the people around you, stay close for the next breakdown. There's another layer to this that almost nobody gets shown, the part that explains why some people rebuild the identity after it breaks and others never do, and it's coming next.